On Thanksgiving, my parents handed my sister an envelope with a $13,000 cruise inside, and she screamed with joy. Then they handed me a card. Inside was a $2 scratch-off lottery ticket and a note in my father's handwriting. Don't spend it all in one place. The whole table laughed. I'm Avery Crawford. I was 34, and I had spent my whole life being the daughter who didn't need anything. So I smiled, and I slipped the card into my coat, and I drove home. 3 weeks later, that $2 ticket was worth $100 million, and by the time my family found out, my phone was already showing 79 missed calls. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge, where quiet women with long memories finally get to tell their side. If you've ever been the daughter they stopped worrying about, the one who got the card while someone else got the cruise, pull up a chair. You already know how this story feels before it even starts. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. Let me tell you about Thanksgiving before the cruise and the scratch-off, because the whole thing makes more sense if you see the ordinary first. I drove the 40 minutes from my apartment in Brookfield to my parents' house in Hartley, and I got there early, the way I always do, because someone has to peel the potatoes, and it was never going to be Dana. I'm a pediatric nurse. I work 12-hour shifts holding small, scared hands, and I am very good at being calm in rooms where everyone else is falling apart. That calm follows me home. At my parents' house, I'm the one who carves, who refills, who notices Grandpa's water glass is empty before he has to ask. Nobody thanks me for it. It's just understood that Avery handles things, because Avery always has. My sister Dana arrived an hour late with her husband Kyle and a bottle of wine she didn't open, and the house rearranged itself around her the way it always does, like she's the sun and the rest of us are furniture. My mother lit up. My father stood. And I stayed in the kitchen with my hands in the sink, listening to them fuss over Dana's new highlights and Kyle's promotion, and I told myself, like I told myself every year, that this was fine. That I didn't mind being the steady one, the easy one, the one who never caused trouble and never asked for much. I had built a whole life on not needing them. I had a job I loved, and a savings account I'd filled myself, and a quiet little apartment that was entirely mine. I didn't need their fuss. That's what I believed about myself, right up until the moment they showed me, with an envelope and a card, exactly how little I was worth to them. I figured out a long time ago why my parents stopped investing in me, and it wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a slow accounting. When I was 17, I got a scholarship to nursing school and worked nights to cover the rest, and my parents took that as permission to stop worrying about me. Avery's got it handled. Avery doesn't need help. Meanwhile, Dana needed everything, and need, in my family, was rewarded like a talent. Dana's car got paid for because she couldn't manage on her own. Dana's wedding got covered because she deserved her dream day. Dana's down payment, her vacations, the time Kyle's business idea went sideways, and my parents quietly absorbed the loss. Every time Dana held out her hands, they filled them, and every time I stood on my own, they took it as a sign I could be safely ignored. I used to think it was a compliment, all that not needing. I told myself self-reliance was a virtue, and it is. But I learned the hard way that in some families, being strong just teaches people they can stop holding you. By the time I was 34, the pattern was so old it was invisible. Dana got the warmth and the money and the front row seat. I got, "You're so independent," and a plate at the far end of the table. I'm telling you this not for pity. I genuinely had a good life. I'm telling you so that when my mother handed Dana a luxury cruise and handed me a scratch-off ticket meant as a punchline, you'll understand it wasn't an accident or a one-time slight. It was just the latest line in a ledger they'd been keeping my whole life, the one where my name was always written in the cheap column. After the pie, my mother clapped her hands and announced it was time for a little early Christmas. She loves a presentation, my mother. She produced a cream-colored envelope and handed it to Dana with both hands like a diploma. Dana opened it and shrieked. Inside was a brochure and a confirmation for a $13,000 Caribbean cruise, balcony suite, the kind of thing that shows up in retirement ads. "Oh my God, Mom! Dad! This is too much. It was not too much. In my family, for Dana, there was no such thing as too much. Kyle pumped my father's hand. My mother glowed. There were tears, actual tears, and a flurry of hugs, and Dana already planning her outfits out loud. And then, when the cruise had been sufficiently celebrated, my mother turned to me, and her face shifted into something amused. "Now, we didn't forget you, Avery," she said, and the table chuckled before I'd even opened anything, because they could already see where this was going. She handed me a card, a regular birthday store card, slightly bent. Inside was a single $2 scratch-off lottery ticket, the cheapest one they sell, the kind they keep by the register. And under it, in my father's blocky handwriting, a note. "Don't spend it all in one place." The whole table laughed. Not a cruel, sneering laugh. Worse, a warm, comfortable family laugh. The laugh of people who found their own joke genuinely delightful, who thought giving the independent daughter a $2 gag gift next to her sister's cruise was just good fun. Because Avery doesn't care about that stuff. Avery's not materialistic. Avery will think it's funny too. I looked at the ticket. I looked at my father's handwriting. And I smiled, because that's what I do. And I said, "Thanks, Dad." And something in me went very quiet. Dana, of course, couldn't leave it alone. She was riding the high of her cruise, and she wanted to share, the way she shares, by aiming a little down. She leaned across the table toward me, her cruise brochure still in her hand, and said, with a smile that was all teeth, "Ah, don't be like that, Avery. It's the thought that counts. It's the thought that counts." I have turned that sentence over 1,000 times since, because she was right, in a way she didn't intend. The thought did count. The thought was the whole point. The thought was that my sister was worth $13,000 and a balcony over the ocean, and I was worth $2 and a joke. The thought was that after 34 years, my own parents had sat down, considered what to give each daughter, and decided this was the appropriate ratio. The cruise was the gift. The thought was the wound. Kyle chuckled and added, "Hey, you never know. That ticket could be the big one." And everyone laughed again, because the idea of me, steady boring Avery, winning anything was apparently hilarious. I didn't argue. I didn't make a scene. I have spent my career keeping my face calm while delivering hard news, and I kept it calm now. But I did one small thing that I didn't fully understand at the time. Instead of leaving that card on the table to be thrown out with the wrapping paper, I slipped it into my coat pocket. The ticket and the note both. I told myself I'd scratch it later, for a laugh. But I think, somewhere underneath, I kept it because it was evidence. Proof, in my father's own handwriting, of exactly what I was worth to the people who made me. I didn't know yet how much that little card was about to be worth to me. I drove home that night in the dark, 40 minutes of empty highway, and I didn't cry, which surprised me a little. I just felt clear, the way you feel after a fever finally breaks. When I got back to my apartment, I took the card out of my coat and I stuck it on my refrigerator with a magnet, scratch-off ticket and all, my father's handwriting facing out. "Don't spend it all in one place." I'm not sure why I did it. Maybe I wanted to stop pretending. For years, I'd let the small cuts close over without looking at them, told myself I was imagining the favoritism, told myself a good daughter doesn't keep score. But that card was not imaginary. It was right there in his handwriting, and putting it on my fridge was my way of finally saying, out loud, to myself, in my own kitchen, "This is real, and it is not okay, and I am allowed to know that." Let me say something to you directly, because I think some of you have a card like mine, even if it isn't paper. Maybe it's the holiday you weren't invited to, or the call that never comes, or the way the help always flows to someone else. If you've spent years telling yourself you're imagining it, I want you to hear this. You're probably not, and you're allowed to put it on the fridge and look at it. That's not bitterness. That's just refusing to lie to yourself anymore. I went to bed that night a 34-year-old woman who had finally admitted her parents loved her sister more, and who had made a quiet peace with building her life around people who would actually show up. I had no idea that the cheapest gift they ever gave me was about to become the most valuable thing I owned. The ticket sat on my fridge for almost a week before I scratched it. It was a Thursday, after a brutal shift. We'd lost a kid that day. Not lost, but a scary night that went right to the edge, and I came home hollowed out the way that job hollows you out sometimes. I poured a glass of cheap wine, and I saw the card on the fridge, and I thought, you know what? Let's spend the $2. A little dumb luck to end a hard day. I took a coin from the jar by the door and I scratched it at my kitchen counter. Not even really looking, expecting the usual nothing. The first number matched. Then another. Then another. There's a thing that happens in my line of work where your brain registers an emergency a half second before your feelings catch up. The monitor alarms and your hands are already moving while your heart is still calm. That's what happened at my counter. My hands knew before I did. I stopped. I set down the coin. I read the little ticket's instructions, then read them again, then matched the numbers a fourth time. Slow. The way I double-check a medication dose. Because the thing about being careful for a living is that you don't trust your own excitement. The numbers matched a prize tier I had to read 3 times to believe. This was not a free ticket or a $20 bump. This was the kind of number that doesn't fit on the little card, the kind that says, claim at lottery headquarters. My hands were steady. My mouth had gone dry. I stood alone in my kitchen at 11 at night, a $2 gag gift in my hand, and I understood that my entire life had just split into before and after. I just didn't know yet which side my family would land on. I didn't sleep. I sat up all night with the ticket in a sandwich bag, a nurse's instinct, protect the evidence, and in the morning I called in a personal day, which I never do, and I quietly drove to a regional lottery office to verify what I already suspected. I won't bore you with the security and the waiting rooms. What matters is the number they confirmed, careful not to say it too loud. $100 million. 100 million. From a $2 ticket my father had given me as a joke. Here's what surprised me about myself. I did not scream. I did not cry tears of joy. The dominant feeling sitting in that office was fear. Because I'm the daughter who handles things, and my brain immediately went to everything that could go wrong. The stories you hear. The winners who end up bankrupt, hunted, ruined, their lives blown apart by the very thing that was supposed to save them. I'd held enough hands in enough hospital rooms to know that sudden change, even good change, is dangerous if you don't manage it right. So while another person might have called everyone they knew, I did the opposite. I told no one, not a soul, not my best friend, not a coworker, and absolutely, positively, not my family. I drove home with the ticket still in its bag, and I sat at my kitchen table, and I made a list, because lists are how I stay calm. Step 1 was not buy a car. Step 1 was find a lawyer. Because I already understood in my bones that the most important decisions of my life were the ones I was about to make in the next 2 weeks, in silence, before anybody knew my name was attached to that number. People always ask me the same question when I tell this part. Why didn't you call your family? You just won $100 million. And the honest answer is that I sat at my table that morning and I genuinely thought about it. There's a reflex, even in a hurt person, to run to the people who made you. I picked up my phone. I scrolled to my mother's name, and then I looked up, and there on the fridge was the card. Don't spend it all in one place. It's the thought that counts, Avery. And I put the phone down. Because here's what I knew about my family, with the same certainty I know how to read a heart monitor. If I called them, the money would become theirs. Not legally. Emotionally. It would instantly stop being the thing that happened to me and become the thing that was owed to everyone. My mother would have opinions. Dana would have needs. Kyle would have a business plan within the hour. And me, the daughter who never asked for anything, would be expected, one more time, to hand over what was mine so that everyone else could feel taken care of. I had watched it my whole life. The cruise, the car, the wedding, the down payment. In my family, Money flowed toward whoever cried loudest, and I had never once been allowed to be the one it flowed toward. I was not going to let the biggest thing that ever happened to me follow that same old current. So I made a decision that I think saved my life, or at least my sanity. I would handle this exactly the way I handle a crisis at work. Calmly, correctly, privately. And only when it was fully under my control would I decide what, if anything, my family deserved to know. The lawyer I found was a woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in exactly this, and who did not blink when I told her the number, which is how I knew I'd found the right person. The first thing she said was, "Have you told anyone?" When I said no, not one person, she actually smiled. "Good," she said. "You may be the first sensible winner I've ever met." Then she taught me the thing that changed everything. The thing most people who win never learn until it's too late. In my state, I did not have to claim the prize as myself. I could form a trust, and the trust could claim the ticket. And the only name that would ever become public was the name of the trust. A blind trust, with Patricia's firm as trustee. My identity would stay sealed. The world, and my family, would only ever know that a local resident had won. And the crucial part, the part Patricia stressed, was the order of operations. You set up the trust before you claim. Once your name is on that giant check, you can never take it off. We had a narrow window to do this right, and we used it. For 2 weeks, while my family ate leftover turkey and planned Dana's cruise wardrobe, I quietly did the most important administrative work of my life. I want you to notice something, because it matters to me that you do. The very thing my family had punished me for my whole life, being careful, being self-sufficient, not needing anyone, was the exact thing that was now protecting me. My calm wasn't a flaw they could overlook. It was the reason I wasn't going to end up another lottery horror story. They taught me to handle things alone. So I did. We named the trust something deliberately boring. 2 ordinary words and the letters LLC. Nothing that pointed at me, nothing anyone would look at twice. Patricia's firm, as trustee, claimed the ticket on the trust's behalf. The money, after taxes, after the lump sum discount, still a number with more zeros than I'd ever held in my mind, moved into accounts I would learn to manage slowly, carefully, with advisors Patricia vetted. There was no giant novelty check photo, no press conference, no local girl makes good headline with my face on it. Just a quiet, legal transaction that turned a scratch-off from my fridge into a fortune held under a name no one could trace. And then I did the strangest, most grounding thing I could have done. I went back to work. I picked up my next shift in the pediatric ward in my same scrubs, and I held the same small, scared hands, and not one person knew that the tired nurse refilling the hand sanitizer was worth $100 million. I cannot fully explain how good that felt. For 2 weeks, I carried the biggest secret of my life, and instead of it isolating me, it steadied me. Every shift reminded me who I actually was, underneath the number. I wasn't a jackpot. I was a nurse who'd gotten very lucky and was determined not to let the luck unmake her. My family, meanwhile, had no idea. To them, I was still the same old, reliable, unremarkable Avery, the one you give $2 and a joke. And I let them keep believing it, because every day that they didn't know was another day the decision stayed entirely mine. I had time now to think about what I really wanted to do, and what I wanted to do had nothing to do with the people who'd laughed at my card. The story broke the way these stories do, in the local paper, and then on every phone in the county. Single winning ticket for $100 million sold in the area. No name, just the trust, just the region, just the staggering number. And my hometown lost its mind. Hartley is not a big place. $100 million ticket sold nearby is the only thing anyone talks about for weeks. Everyone had a theory. Everyone knew somebody who might be the one. And here is the part that still makes me laugh a little, bitterly. My own family talked about it constantly, obsessively, and not once, not for a single second, did any of them think of me. I know because Dana texted me about it. Did you hear someone around here won $100 million? Crazy. Imagine. Imagine indeed. My mother apparently speculated it was a man who ran the hardware store. My father bet it was somebody at his old union. They ran through every name in Hartley like a deck of cards, and the daughter they'd handed a $2 ticket 3 weeks earlier never came up, because the idea that boring, independent Avery could be sitting on that kind of money simply did not compute in the family religion. I was furniture. Furniture doesn't win the lottery. I read Dana's text standing in the hospital break room, and I typed back something short and breezy. Then I put my phone in my locker and went back to my shift. And I felt something I'd never felt in relation to my family before. Not hurt, not longing, power. I was holding the single biggest secret in the county, the answer to the question the whole town was asking, and the people who'd spent my life underestimating me were the very last people who would ever guess. For once, being invisible was the most delicious thing in the world. While the town guessed, I sat with a question I'd never had the luxury of asking before. What did I actually want? Not what would shut my family up. Not what would finally make them love me. What did I, Avery, want to do with a fortune that had fallen out of a gag gift? Dana posted a countdown to her cruise, glossy photos of swimwear and sunsets captioned, "Blessed." I looked at it without envy, which surprised me. 3 weeks earlier, that cruise had felt like proof of my own worthlessness. Now it just looked small. $13,000. I could buy 1,000 of those cruises and not feel it. And I realized that the money had quietly stripped the power out of the thing that had wounded me. My parents' favoritism only had teeth as long as their resources mattered to me, and their resources no longer mattered at all. That was a strange kind of freedom. So I started making a different list. Not things to buy, people to honor. Because if there's one thing 34 years of being overlooked taught me, it's exactly who does the overlooking and who doesn't. I knew, down to the name, which people in my life had treated me like I mattered back when I had nothing to offer them. And I knew that the truest revenge, though I didn't even think of it as revenge, not really, wasn't going to be a speech or a scene. It was going to be where I chose to point all this sudden power. Toward the people who'd valued me at full price when my own family priced me at $2. I picked up my pen, and at the top of the list I wrote one name first, Aunt Carol. And then I drove to my apartment to find a shoebox I hadn't opened in years. There's a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet that I've carried from apartment to apartment for years and never quite been able to throw away. That night I took it down, and I finally understood why I'd kept it. Inside was every gift my parents had ever given me. Not Dana's gifts. Mine. I'd saved them, the way you save things when some part of you is keeping a record you're not ready to read. A keychain from a gas station still in its plastic. A regifted candle, the previous tag barely scraped off. A birthday card from when I was 16 with a coupon tucked inside. An expired coupon for a store that had closed. Socks. A mug that said someone else's name, crossed out. Years of it. The physical archive of being an afterthought. Each cheap little object a line in the ledger I'd told you about. And now, on top of the pile, I laid the newest entry. The Thanksgiving card. The $2 scratch-off's torn twin, and my father's note. Don't spend it all in one place. I sat on my bedroom floor and I spread it all out around me, the gas station keychain and the expired coupon and the crossed-out mug, and beside it I held up my phone with Dana's cruise photos glowing on the screen, $13,000 of balcony and ocean. And the truth of my whole childhood finally set itself plainly in my own head. They didn't forget me. They priced me. Every one of these wasn't a thoughtless mistake. It was an accurate report. This is what we think you're worth. And the strangest thing happened as I sat there. The hurt didn't get bigger. It got quieter. And underneath it, something settled into place. Hard and calm and permanent. I wasn't going to spend $1 trying to change their math. I was going to spend my life proving their math was never about me at all. I put the shoebox lid back on. I kept it. I'd need it for Christmas. The first thing I did with real money, I did in total secret, and it had nothing to do with my parents. My Aunt Carol is my mother's younger sister, and she is the single reason I know what family is supposed to feel like. When I was a kid, Carol was the one who came to my school plays when my parents were at Dana's recitals. She's the one who taught me to drive, who mailed me $20 in college with a note that said, "For something fun, not something sensible," who has called me on my birthday every year of my life without fail. And Carol was in trouble. I'd known for months, in the vague way you know things about relatives. A health scare, a surgery, and the medical bills that follow a person around this country like a debt collector with a flashlight. She was 60 years old and quietly terrified of losing her house over it, and she'd never once asked me or anyone for help, because that's the kind of person she is. So I called Patricia, my lawyer, and I arranged to pay off every cent of Aunt Carol's medical debt, anonymously. The hospital and the collection agency were simply informed that the balance had been settled by a private party who wished to remain unnamed. Carol would never know it was me. I made sure of that because the whole point was that it came with no strings, no performance, no ledger. Just the thing she'd given me my whole life, handed back when it finally counted. I want you to notice the difference because it's the entire heart of this story. My family gave gifts as a way of keeping score. I had just learned that you could give a gift as a way of keeping faith. And it felt nothing like winning the lottery. It felt better. The second thing I did at the place that had held me up through every hard year of my adult life. The pediatric ward where I work runs on a shoestring, the way most of them do. There's a piece of monitoring equipment we'd needed for 2 years. The kind that lets a scared kid stay in their own room instead of being shipped to the city. And there's a fund for families who can't cover the gap between insurance and survival, and that fund is always, always empty by spring. So I made an anonymous donation, a large one, large enough to buy the equipment outright and seed the family fund for years. I routed it through the trust so my name never touched it, and then I went to work my next shift and watched my coworkers read the email about the incredibly generous anonymous gift with tears in their eyes, and I cried right along with them, and nobody knew the gift was standing in the room wearing the same scrubs as them. I'm telling you about Carol's debt and the children's ward before I tell you what happened with my family, and I'm doing it on purpose. Because I need you to understand who I'd already chosen to be before the 79 missed calls ever started. By the time my family found out about the money and came running, I had already spent a meaningful chunk of it. Not on cars or houses or revenge, but on the people who'd loved me when I was worth nothing to anyone. That wasn't an accident of timing. That was the whole answer. When you finally have the power to give, you find out the truth about yourself in where you point it. My family was about to find out the truth about themselves in the exact same way, and it would not be flattering. A secret that big can't stay sealed forever in a town that small. The leak, when it came, was almost stupidly ordinary. The clerk at the convenience store where my father had bought the ticket remembered the sale. A regular guy buying a single $2 scratch-off as part of a stack of holiday cards. The store got a small bonus for selling the winning ticket, and in the excitement, someone mentioned that the lucky card had been a gift, bought by a local man, given away to family. That detail traveled. A gift ticket. Given to family. And slowly, in the gossip of a small place, people started doing the math my own family had refused to do. A cousin of mine, sharper than the rest, put it together first. The winning ticket was sold at the store by my dad's house, around Thanksgiving, as a gift to a relative. And then she remembered, because she'd been at that dinner, that Gary Crawford had handed his other daughter a $2 scratch-off as a joke. I got the first strange text from that cousin on a Tuesday. "Avery, that lottery ticket. Was that the one your dad gave you? Did you win?" I stared at it in the break room for a long time. I'd known this moment would come. I'd had 3 weeks to prepare for it. 3 weeks of quiet, of doing things right, of becoming the person I wanted to be before the noise started. And now the noise was coming. I could feel it gathering, like the pressure change before a storm rolls over the lake. I didn't answer the cousin. I put my phone in my locker and finished my shift. Calm hands, steady voice. One more night of holding small, scared hands, because I knew that by the time I clocked out, my whole life was going to be ringing. Before the storm fully hit, I got one phone call that I'll keep for the rest of my life. It was Aunt Carol, and she was crying so hard she could barely talk. For a second, I thought something was wrong, and my nurse brain snapped to attention. But she was crying because something was right. "Avery," she said, "you won't believe it. The hospital called. My bills, all of them. Somebody paid them. All of it. They said it was an anonymous donor and they couldn't tell me who." She was sobbing. Who does that? Who in the world does that for an old woman they don't even... I've been so scared, honey. I've been so scared about the house. And now it's just... gone. The whole debt. Gone. I held the phone and I closed my eyes. And I did not tell her. It took everything I had, but I didn't tell her, because the gift was only clean if it stayed quiet. "Carol," I said, keeping my voice as even as I could. "I'm so glad. You deserve that. You deserve every good thing." "I don't know what I did to deserve an angel," she said. "You took me to my school plays," I thought. "You mailed me $20 for something fun. You called me every birthday for 34 years. That's what you did." "Sometimes the world just pays you back for being good," I told her. We talked a while longer, and I let her be happy, and I felt the difference in my chest as sharp as a blade. Because in a matter of hours, my phone would start filling with calls from people who'd priced me at $2, suddenly desperate to tell me they loved me. And here was the one person who'd loved me all along, thanking a stranger, with no idea the stranger was me. I knew exactly which call meant more. It started that evening, and it started with my mother. I was driving home from my shift when her name lit up the dashboard. I didn't answer. A minute later, my father. I didn't answer. Then Dana. Then Kyle. Then a number I didn't recognize. Then my mother again. Then Dana again. The calls stacking up one after another like dominoes, the whole family clearly in some group text I wasn't part of, coordinating, dialing, passing the phone around. The cousin had told someone who'd told someone, and now the answer to the question the whole town had been asking for 3 weeks had landed in my family's lap, and the answer was the daughter they'd handed a joke. I pulled into my apartment lot and sat in the dark car and watched my phone light up over and over, my mother's face, my father's face, Dana's face, names I hadn't heard from in months, suddenly desperate to reach me. I didn't feel triumphant exactly. I felt very, very calm, the way I feel when a patient's family is panicking and someone has to be the still point. I let it ring. Every single one. I didn't decline the calls, which felt aggressive. I just let them ring out, one after another, and watched the missed call counter climb. There's a particular kind of clarity that comes from watching people who never had time for you suddenly unable to reach you fast enough. Every unanswered ring was a sentence in a story they were telling on themselves, the story of exactly how fast love appears when $100 million is attached to it. I went inside. I made tea. I let the phone buzz on the counter beside the fridge, beside the card, beside my father's handwriting. Don't spend it all in one place. And I waited to see how high the number would climb. By the time I finally looked at my phone properly, late that night, the screen showed 79 missed calls. 79. From my mother, my father, Dana, Kyle, aunts, cousins, a couple of numbers I genuinely couldn't place, and the voicemails, and the texts. I made myself read them, all of them, sitting at my kitchen table with my tea, because I wanted to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The texts were a thing of wonder. From my mother, who 3 weeks ago had handed me a gag gift. "Sweetheart, we are so happy for you. Call Mom right away. We love you so, so much." From Dana, who'd told me it's the thought that counts. "OMG, Avery. I'm literally crying happy tears. You deserve this. We have to celebrate. Family sticks together." From Kyle, who I'm not sure had said 10 sincere words to me in his life. "Hey, Avery. Huge congrats. When you get a sec, I've actually got some really smart ideas for protecting and growing that kind of money. Let's talk soon. Family sticks together. We love you so much. You deserve this. I read 79 missed calls worth of sudden, frantic, overflowing love, and I felt the cold all the way down, because not one of them, not one, wrote anything like, "I'm sorry." Not one said, "Avery, we've treated you terribly for years and we're ashamed." They didn't think they'd done anything wrong. In their minds, nothing needed apologizing for, because in their minds I'd simply gotten lucky, and now it was time for the family to gather around the luck. The $2 ticket hadn't taught them anything. The 100 million had just made me, at long last, worth calling. I set the phone down. I did not call anyone back, but I did decide, sitting there, that they were going to hear from me. Once. On my terms. I listened to the voicemails the next morning, with coffee, the way you'd review case notes. Most were variations on the texts, breathless and loving and brand new. But 2 of them told me everything I needed to know about what my family actually wanted. The first was Kyle's. He'd left a 4-minute voicemail, 4 minutes, and he didn't waste much of it on congratulations. He explained, been doing some research, and he knew exactly the right people to help me handle a windfall of this magnitude. And he really thought we should sit down, just the 2 of us, before I made any rash decisions, because family should keep this kind of thing in the family. A man who had never once asked about my life had, within hours, appointed himself the manager of my fortune. The second was Dana's, and it was almost worse because it tried to be sincere. She cried on the message and said she was sorry if the cruise thing made you feel bad, and that she'd always looked up to me, which was such a stunning rewriting of history that I had to put the coffee down. And then, in the same breath, she mentioned that she and Kyle had been looking at a bigger house, and that, wouldn't it be amazing if we could all finally be comfortable? There it was. The apology and the ask, fused together so tightly you almost couldn't see the seam. I sat with both voicemails and I understood, completely, that my family was not sorry. They were sorry the joke had backfired. They were sorry that the daughter they'd priced at $2 had turned out to be holding the most valuable thing in the county, and now they had to scramble to reprice me before I noticed they'd been wrong about my worth all along. My mother's voicemail I saved for last, and I listened to it twice. It was long, and it was warm, and it was the performance of her life. "Avery, my baby girl," she began, and I actually flinched, because she had not called me that since I was small, since before I became the easy one she could safely ignore. She told me how proud she was, how she'd always known I was special, how this family has always been there for each other through thick and thin. She got a little weepy talking about how much she loved both her girls, equally, always had. And she ended by saying that she just wanted her family together for Christmas, all of us, like always, because that's what matters. Not money, never money, just family. Not money, never money. From the woman who'd handed me $2 and handed Dana $13,000, 3 weeks before the money turned out to be mine. I stood in my kitchen and I looked at the card on the fridge while her voice filled my apartment with love she'd never shown me when it was free. And I made my decision, fully and finally. I wasn't going to scream at them. I wasn't going to send a furious text or block their numbers or vanish, though I could have, and part of me wanted to. Those were small revenges, and they'd let my family go on telling themselves I was just bitter, just dramatic, just Avery overreacting again. No, I was going to do the one thing they'd never be able to spin. I was going to show up at Christmas, calm and kind, in front of the entire family, and I was going to tell the simple truth out loud, and then I was going to set a boundary they could not cross, and I was going to bring the card. I texted my mother back. One message, after 79 calls. "I'll come to Christmas. See you then." That was all. I could feel, even through the silence that followed, how it landed. The relief, The scramble, the group text surely lighting up with "She's coming." She answered, "She's coming." I let them have their flurry. I had chosen Christmas on purpose, and I want to be honest with you about why, because it wasn't only about an audience. It would have been easier to do this in private. A phone call, a coffee, just me and my parents. But private is where my family does its best erasing. In private, my mother could cry and reframe and turn my truth into my cruelty, and Dana could play wounded, and by the next week the story would be that Avery got money and got mean. I'd watched them rewrite reality my whole life. Not this time. The same instinct that told me to claim the prize through a trust told me to deliver the truth in the open. With witnesses. With the aunts and cousins and grandparents in the room, the same people who'd laughed at my card on Thanksgiving. Let them all hear it at once, so there'd be no version to spin afterward. I wasn't going to ambush anyone or make a vicious scene. I was going to be exactly what I always am, calm, steady, kind, and let the truth do the work, the way a clear chart does the work in a room full of panic. The facts were devastating enough on their own. They didn't need me to raise my voice. I spent the days before Christmas getting ready, not buying gifts, but getting my own heart steady, practicing the few sentences I needed to say so I could say them without shaking. And I made sure of one thing: the card was coming with me. The night before Christmas, Aunt Carol called me again, and this time she'd figured something out. Not the donation. She still didn't know about that. But she'd heard, like everyone had, that I was the winner, and she'd heard that the family was in a frenzy, and she called me not to congratulate me on the money but to check on me, which tells you everything about the difference between Carol and the rest of them. "How are you, honey?" she said. And she meant it, the way nobody else had thought to mean it in 79 calls. This must be a lot. People can get strange about money. I told her I was okay. I told her I was going to Christmas, that I had some things to say. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something I carried into that room with me. "You don't owe them anything, Avery. I want you to hear me. Not the money, not an explanation, not your forgiveness. Nothing. You've been giving to that family your whole life and getting handed scraps, and whatever you decide to do tomorrow, I'm on your side. I'll always be on your side. You were never the easy one to me. You were the best one." I had to sit down, because that was the thing I'd been starving for my entire life, and it had been there all along, just not from the people I'd been trained to want it from. I thought about the shoebox, and the card, and the $2 ticket, and I thought about Carol mailing me $20 for something fun and not something sensible. And I understood that I wasn't walking into Christmas to get anything from my parents. I'd already gotten the only thing that mattered from the one person who'd always given it freely. I picked up the card. I was ready. My parents' house at Christmas was a different country than it had been at Thanksgiving. When I walked in, the whole room turned toward me like sunflowers toward the sun, the exact treatment that had always, my entire life, been reserved for Dana. My mother rushed me before I had my coat off, arms wide. "There she is! There's my girl!" My father stood up so fast he knocked the footrest. Dana was there, and Kyle, and a dozen aunts and uncles and cousins and my grandparents in their chairs by the tree, and every face was lit with a warmth I had never once been greeted with in 34 years. Dana had postponed her cruise, I learned, to be with family for the holidays, which is to say, she'd canceled a balcony over the Caribbean the instant she learned where the real money was. The tree was up, the lights were on, presents were piled, and I noticed, with a calm I was almost proud of, that several of those presents had my name on them this year. Big ones. My mother steered me to the good chair, the one I'd never been offered. She pressed a glass of wine into my hand. Everyone was talking at once. Congratulations and love and how wonderful and how proud. A wall of sound designed to sweep me up in it, to make me feel, finally, like one of them. And I let it happen for a few minutes. I sat in the good chair, and I held the wine I wasn't going to drink, and I let my family perform their love at full volume, because I wanted to see all of it. The whole show, before I spoke. I wanted to remember it. The hugs, the tears, the presents with my name on them 3 weeks too late. And when it had crested, when the room was warm and certain it had won me back, I set down my wine and I said quietly, "Can I say something?" The room hushed fast, the way a room hushes when it's been waiting for you to speak. 3 weeks ago, I couldn't have gotten this family to quiet down for me if I'd stood on the table. Now, the moment I opened my mouth, you could have heard a pin drop, because now I was worth listening to. I noted that too. I stood up, not because I needed to loom, but because I wanted to be able to see every face, and I wanted every face to see me. My mother was beaming, certain this was the moment I'd melt, the prodigal daughter about to gush about how much family means. Kyle had his phone in his hand again. Dana's eyes were shining. "First," I said, "thank you all for the warm welcome. It's quite a change." A few uncertain chuckles, not sure yet if it was a joke. 3 weeks ago, at Thanksgiving, in the same house, most of you were here. I kept my voice gentle, conversational, the tone I used to tell a family hard news without breaking them. My parents gave Dana a $13,000 cruise, and they gave me this. I reached into my bag and I took out the card. The bent birthday store card, the empty space where the scratch-off had been, and my father's handwriting plain across the bottom. I held it up so the room could see it. "A $2 lottery ticket," I said, "with a note from my dad. Would you like me to read it?" Nobody answered. My father had gone pale. I read it anyway, calmly, into the silence. "Don't spend it all in one place." I let it sit. Everybody laughed that night. "It's the thought that counts," Dana told me. And she was right. The thought did count. The thought was that she was worth $13,000, and I was worth $2. The room had stopped breathing. "I kept the card," I said. "I want to tell you why." "I kept it," I said, "because for the first time in my life, I let myself stop pretending it didn't mean anything. My whole life, the gifts told the truth this family wouldn't say out loud. Dana got the cruises and the cars and the down payment. I got keychains and expired coupons and $2. And I always told myself I was imagining it. This card is the one time it was too clear to argue with. So I put it on my fridge, and I looked at it every day, and I finally believed what it was telling me. I looked at my mother, then my father, then around the whole circle of suddenly silent faces. Then I scratched the ticket, and it was worth $100 million. I said the number plainly, no drama, and watched it move through the room like a current. I claimed it quietly, through a trust, with a lawyer, which is why it took you 3 weeks and a convenience store clerk to figure out it was me. And in those 3 weeks, before any of you called, I'd already decided what to do with it. I set the card down on the coffee table, face up, where everyone could see the handwriting. I paid off Aunt Carol's medical debt, anonymously, because when I was a kid, she came to my school plays while you were all at Dana's recitals. Carol wasn't there. She did Christmas with her church, but I saw 2 cousins' heads turn, saw it land. I gave a large gift to the children's hospital where I work, for the families who can't pay. And I'm setting up a scholarship fund for nursing students who are putting themselves through, the way I did, alone. Then I looked at my mother, and I said the thing I'd come to say, quiet and steady and absolutely without cruelty. You valued me at $2 for 34 years, and now that the $2 turned into $100 million, you've decided I'm your baby girl again. I let that breathe. But I'm not going to fund a single person in this room, and I need you to understand that it's not revenge. It's just the receipt. Then the warmth in the room curdled all at once into something much more honest. My mother got there first. "How can you say that?" she cried, the tears switching instantly from joy to injury. "After everything you'd punish your own family? Over a card? It was a joke, Avery. It was just a joke. And you're going to throw your family away over $2? "I'm not throwing anyone away," I said. "I'm just not paying to be loved. There's a difference." Kyle stood up, red in the face, The manager act gone. This is insane. That's family money. It should help the family. You can't just sit on 100 million while your own parents. It's not family money, I said. It's mine. It was always going to be whoever's name was on the ticket. It just happened to be the daughter you gave it to as a joke. And Dana started to say it. The old reflex. Avery, it's the thought that... And then she heard herself. Heard her own Thanksgiving words coming back out of her mouth. And she stopped. Her face crumpling into something that, for 1 second, looked almost like real shame. That was the closest thing to a genuine moment any of them gave me. It didn't change anything. But I saw it. And here's the part I want you to notice, because it's the whole reason it worked. While they shouted, I didn't. I stood there, calm, my hands quiet at my sides, and I let them be exactly as loud and as ugly and as grasping as they wanted to be, in front of the grandparents and the aunts and the cousins, in front of everyone whose good opinion they cared about. The louder they got about the money, the more clearly the whole room could see what they were. My mother screaming that I owed her, 3 weeks after the $2 card. Kyle demanding a stranger's fortune. And me, the easy one, the afterthought, just standing there telling the truth in a level voice while my family showed everyone exactly who they'd always been. I didn't stay to fight. There was nothing to fight about. I picked up my coat, and I left the card right there on the coffee table. They could keep it. I had what it taught me. And I said, on my way to the door, Merry Christmas. I do love some of you. I just won't be buying any of you. And I walked out into the cold and drove home. And I didn't cry. And the quiet in the car felt like the cleanest thing I'd ever breathed. The fallout was about what you'd expect. My mother told the extended family I'd changed, that the money had gone to my head, that I'd turned my back on my own blood. Some of them believed her. Fewer than she'd hoped, though, because they'd all been in the room, and you can't fully unsee a woman screaming about owed millions next to a $2 card. I kept the money where it belonged, in the trust, managed carefully. I funded the nursing scholarship and named it, quietly, after Aunt Carol, though I told her it was named for a nurse who believed in second chances, and let her think it was a coincidence that it sounded like her. I kept working my shifts. I didn't buy a mansion or a sports car. I bought a slightly nicer apartment, with a real guest room and a reliable car, and the freedom to never again sit at a table where my worth was up for debate. Dana texted me a month later. No ask this time. Just, I'm sorry. For Thanksgiving, and for a lot of years. You didn't deserve any of it. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't delete it either. I put it, in a manner of speaking, in a different shoebox. The one where I keep the things that might, someday, be worth keeping. I still work at the hospital. I still hold small, scared hands, and most days nobody there knows what's in the trust, and I like it that way. My door is open now to the people who valued me when I was worth nothing to them. To Aunt Carol, always. To Dana, maybe, slowly, if the apology keeps being real and stays free of asking. It's closed to anyone who only found their love for me at the bottom of $100 million. I don't keep the card on my fridge anymore. I don't need the reminder. The people who price you cheap are only ever telling you what they're worth, not what you are. So that's how a $2 joke taught my family the real cost of underestimating someone. The card on the fridge, the 79 missed calls, the shoebox full of everything I was supposedly worth. If there's someone in your life who keeps handing you the cheap gift, believe them the first time. Then go spend your one wild life on the people who never once put a price on you. If this reached you, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for the next one.